Hey guys, I am so excited to kick off my yearly makeup collection Declutter. I am going to be going by category, so today's video we're going to be focusing on face products. I do think the majority of the things I declutter in this category is going to be cheek products. I've actually done a good job keeping my base product collection very curated since the last time I decluttered them, so I don't think there's a whole lot that I'm going to get rid of there, but definitely in the cheek category, I really want to downsize. So let's start with the base. Okay, so here we have all my setting sprays, which is just one setting spray, primers, foundations, concealers, and powders. And this category, like I said, I don't think I'm going to have much that I want to get rid of. I think I only have one thing actually that I want to get rid of, and it's this primer. This, if you saw my products on the chopping block video recently, this was one of those products. This is the Hard Candy Sheer NB Glow Serum Primer. I retested this in that video if you want to see, but this is a very, very glowy serum-like primer, and it does have a very serum-like texture, verging on greasy feeling. And I did do a wear test with this on one side of my face and no primer on the other side of my face, and I noticed that my foundation actually broke down a little bit more on the side with this primer than the side without. So yeah, I mean, if you have super dry skin and you want something really just like illuminating but also very emollient feeling, kind of oily feeling, then you might like this, but otherwise I wouldn't really recommend it. Also, I really just don't wear glowy primers very often at all. If I'm wearing a primer, it's either going to be a gripping primer or like a smoothing, pore blurring primer. I don't really have much of a use for glowy, serum-y primers like this, so that I'm going to pass on. This is actually still pretty new. I've only used it a handful of times. And honestly, looking through all the rest of this, I think I'm going to keep all of this. I feel like this is a very reasonably sized base collection. I have 2 powders, 1 setting spray. These are my primers here, my foundations, and then my concealers, which I just have 4, plus a color corrector. And then this is a little foundation sample. That's actually the KVD Good Apple foundation. I do really want to try this soon, so I'm going to keep that and hopefully use that up soon. And I like all these products, so I'm going to keep them all. Alright, so next let's move on to my favorite category, which is blushes. I have a lot of blushes. This is just my cream blush collection, so we have a lot to get through. I do want to say about half of this I received in PR, so only about half of what you're seeing are things I actually bought myself. So like if I didn't do YouTube, I definitely wouldn't have as many blushes, but let's go ahead and I actually want to swatch all of these because I want to compare the shades together so that I can really see what's going on here. One that I already know I'm going to declutter. This is the Kaja Cheeky Stamp in the shade Koi. This was another product that was on my chopping block that I've decided to go ahead and get rid of because I do have some other blushes that are a similar shade, including this one from Kaja. This is the Whipped Dream in the shade Meringue Pink. Kind of a similar shade, not identical, but close enough that I really don't need both, and I much prefer the Whipped Dream formula over the Cheeky Stamp. The Cheeky Stamp I just find a little bit too sheer, and I also feel like it goes on a little bit patchy, and it takes up so much space. It's so bulky. Like this is like the size of like 3 cream blushes, and it's just one product. So just kind of gets on my nerves, and this is actually still pretty new, so I would like to just go ahead and pass this on while it's still in good condition, and hopefully someone else can enjoy it. Now that that one's out of the way, I want to go ahead and swatch the rest of these. So I swatched these all sort of in order of color. Down here we have 2 berry toned blushes that are pretty similar. This one is the Milk Makeup Cream Blush in the shade Quickie. These 2 Milk Cream Blush sticks, by the way, I actually just got in PR. I haven't even tried these on my face yet, but I'm really excited to give them a try. I know these are really popular, so that's that one. And then this other berry blush here is the Ciate Dewy Blush Glossy Cheek Tint in the shade Pomegranate. So between these 2, I know I haven't tried the Milk Makeup one yet, but just feeling the formula on my arm, I can see myself liking this one more than the Ciate one. The Ciate one is kind of a finicky formula. It is very glossy. I did a really sheared out swatch there, but on the cheeks it is super glossy. It almost feels like a lip gloss. Very sticky, it doesn't really dry down or anything, and it also can tend to look kind of patchy. So that's not really a blush shade that I wear super often anyway, like a super berry blush. I do like it sometimes, especially in the winter, but I don't need to have two of such a similar color. So I'm gonna get rid of the Ciate one, and this is gonna be my little declutter bin over here. So keep that. Moving on, I only have one like really bubblegum pink cream blush. That's this one here. This is the About Face cream blush in the shade Laid. I really like this formula. It has like a almost cream to powder kind of silky sort of feel to it. Very unique texture. And it's also kind of on the sheer side, which I like for such a bright color because I feel like it's just really foolproof. So that one I am going to keep. I do enjoy a nice pink blush from time to time. So then we have these two. These are more like neutral, muted pinks. These are actually really similar. This one here is the e.l.f. Luminous Putty Blush in the shade Maui. And this one is my Cream Franken Blush, which is a mixture of the CoverGirl Lipstick in Honeyed Bloom and the highlight side of the Oma Beauty Contour and Highlight Stick in the shade White Pearl. I do really want to use this up just because I want to have the satisfaction of fully using up that CoverGirl lipstick, and it's also a really beautiful color, and there's really not a whole lot left, so I am going to keep that, but I'm also going to keep the e.l.f. Maui Luminous Putty Blush because I know that when that one has run out, I will want to have a similar color. So this is another really nice formula. It does live up to the name. It is very luminous. So if I go overboard with it, sometimes my cheeks can look a little too metallic, but as long as I don't go too heavy-handed with it, it is really, really pretty. And I love that type of shade. It's just such a great everyday blush color. So I am going to keep both of those. This next one I'm definitely not getting rid of. This is one of my favorite blushes ever. This is the Milani Cheek Kiss Cream Blush in the shade Nude Kiss. Just a great like reddish pink blush shade. Another one of my favorite types of shades to wear. Okay, to be honest, I'm probably not going to get rid of any more of these, so I'm just going to go quickly through them. The Minori Cream Blush in Scarlet. This is like my one and only really red cream blush. It actually is kind of similar to that Milani one, but it is definitely different on the cheeks. And I love this kind of color, so I am going to keep that. The NYX Sweet Cheeks blush in Nude Tude. I love this one. This is such a great beigey nude blush. I just think it's so pretty. Kind of hard to find a shade like this, and I love this formula too, so definitely keeping that. I'm also definitely going to keep my LYS cream blush in the shade Kindness. That's this one right here. This is a nice, like, brighter coral shade. Definitely a lot brighter than some of these other peachy blushes. And this is another great, like, more matte cream blush formula. Then these three are all really similar, but this is just one of my favorite types of blush shades, like just a nice peachy nude shade. So I think I am going to keep all three. This top one is that Kaja Whipped Dream in Meringue Pink. This one here is the Milk Makeup Cream Blush in Work. And then this is the Tower 28 Cream Blush in Magic Hour. Yeah, you can kind of see subtle differences between those. Tower 28 one is definitely a little bit warmer, and the Milk one is a little bit more pinky, and then the Kaja one is kind of somewhere in between. But I really like all three of these shades, so I'm going to keep all of those. Okay, so I started with 13, I got rid of 2, so that brings us down to 11 cream blushes, which is still a lot, but I just really love all of these, so I don't see a need to declutter just for the sake of decluttering. Alright, so I swatched all of my powder blushes now. I have 12 of these, and I tried to kind of swatch them by color category, but it got a little mixed up. So these top two here are two like really cool bubblegum pink blushes. This first one is the Lawless. This is new from Lawless. It's their Make Me Blush in Watermelon. I also just got this in PR yesterday, so I haven't even tried this on my face, but I am really curious to try it. That shade is really similar to the Kokie Soft Gradient Blush in the shade Starcrossed, which is the second one down there. That's what this one looks like when I swirl all three of the shades together. So it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more purpley than the Lawless one, but I think I want to try, I need to at least try the Lawless one before I decide. For now, I don't really want to get rid of either one of these. This third one down here, I think I could actually let go of this one. This is the Kokie Soft Gradient Blush in the shade Sweetheart. I only recently added this to my collection. They sent me a few more of the shades of these blushes. I have loved Starcrossed and Bellissima. Bellissima is my favorite shade. Those two I've loved for like the last year. This one I just recently received. I thought I would try it just because this one actually has some shimmer to it. It's more of like a satin finish, whereas the other two are matte. But I think I just prefer the matte version of these blushes. This one is just kind of powdery, but also the shade is just not that unique to my collection, so I don't really think it makes sense for me to keep this. This is also relatively new, so I would really like for someone else to be able to use this while it's still new. This next one down is one of my absolute favorites, so I'm not getting rid of this one. This is the Flower Pots blush in the shade Sweet Pea. That's this shade right here. Really pretty matte, like light, cooler pink blush. Actually, I don't really have any other powder blushes quite like this. And really, I don't think I have any cream blushes quite in this type of shade either, so this one I'm definitely keeping. These next two, so dang, I really didn't think I was gonna let go of this, but this is the Aether Beauty Crystal Charged Cheek Palette in the shade Amber. This has been discontinued for a long time. Also, this brand is unfortunately going out of business, which is so sad, but I have a lot of products from them that I love. This one I really do like. In fact, this was recently in my everyday makeup drawer and I was raving about, how much I was enjoying it. But outside of the time that it was in my everyday makeup drawer, I probably went like a year without using this. And I think it's because for some reason face palettes I just don't remember to use. I just, for some reason, I gravitate towards my single cheek products, and I really rarely use face palettes. So that's one problem. These are the two shades in this cheek palette. So you can see that's the slightly lighter peachy one, and then this is the more like reddish coral one. I really like both of those two shades, but comparing them to my other peachy blushes down here, they don't really stand out as that unique. And the highlighter in here I do enjoy, but I have other like golden, champagne-y toned highlighters that I like just as much, that I use a lot more because they're not in a face palette. So oh man, I'm kind of sad to get rid of this, but I think this is one like pretty big item. It does take up a lot of space, and I would really like to free up the space that this takes because I just, I hardly ever use it. So even though this is a lovely product, gonna add that into my declutter bin. Okay, so this next one down here is the e.l.f. Primer Infused Blush in the shade Always Cheeky. Really pretty peachy blush. It's funny, I didn't realize how similar this was to Milani Luminoso, which is actually this last one down here. I didn't realize how similar these were. Also, I definitely thought this blush was matte, but looking at the swatch, I don't know if you can tell, but it actually has some glow to it. Like, it's got kind of a satin finish. And let me swatch these next to each other on my hand. Okay, so here are those two. This top one is the e.l.f. Always Cheeky. The bottom one is the Milani Luminoso. Dang, I really like both of these, but I just don't think I need to keep two blushes that are so similar. I don't know. If I were to get rid of one, it would be the e.l.f. one. Let me kind of put this to the side and come back to it. See how we feel about it in a little while. Okay, so these two blushes right here are surprisingly similar. This one is the Sigma blush in Corderosa. That's this one. And then this one is the Koki Soft Gradient Blush in Bellissima. These are so similar. Here are two I'm definitely not getting rid of. We have the Essence, the blush in the shade Befitting. That's this one right here. There's just not much else quite like it. It goes so well with just so many different looks. So I am going to keep that. And then this one is the Milani Baked Powder Blush in the shade Berry Amour. I actually had this a long time ago, decluttered it, and then regretted decluttering it. And then my friend ended up giving me another one after she heard me talking about how much I missed having it. So definitely not getting rid of that. This is actually pretty new as well. That's this one, the second one down from the bottom. Really pretty, almost like brick rose type of shade. And it does have a glow to it. That's actually kind of similar to both of those other reddish blushes I was talking about. These three I actually think are kind of similar to each other, except this baked blush, of course, has some shimmer to it. Let me swatch all three of these. This is the Sigma Corderosa, this is the Koki Bellissima, and this is the Milani Berry Amour. Now that I swatch them all next to each other, I feel like they're not that similar. Like, I do see some minor differences between the three. The Sigma one is like a little bit more muted, which I kind of like. I just can't get rid of the Kokie one because it's like one of my top favorite blushes ever. And then the Milani Berry Amore, I obviously am not getting rid of. So you know what? This is one of my favorite types of blushes, especially in the summertime. So I would like to keep these at least throughout the summer because I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of all of them. Maybe once I've had a chance to use them all some more, I will be able to narrow it down a bit. But for now, I want to keep all three. So that brings us back to this conundrum. I think I am going to pass on the e.l.f. Primer Infused Blush. I went such a long time without using this. This is another one that, even though I like it, for some reason I just don't reach for it that much unless I intentionally put it in my everyday makeup drawer. So I actually did better with the powder blushes than I did with the cream blushes. I actually got rid of 4 out of 12, which is a third of my powder blushes. So that feels like a win. All right, next for bronzer. I have a smaller bronzer collection than blush, for sure, but I do still think I want to get rid of a couple of these. So let me swatch them out. All right, so I swatched all my bronzers. Here on this arm, I have my cream bronzers. So from top down, we have the Soul Body Bronzing Balm in Fair, the LYS No Limits Cream Bronzer Stick in Motivate, the NYX Wonder Stick in Fair, the Oma Contour Stick in White Pearl, and the e.l.f. Putty Bronzer in Feelin' Shady. So actually, I only have 5 of these, and they are all pretty different from each other, so I think I'm going to keep them all. I have some warm bronzer tones, I have some cooler contour tones, and I honestly love and use all of these, so those I'm going to keep. But then, looking at my powder bronzers, I have 6 of these. So these two I know are not going anywhere. This top one is the Charlotte Tilbury bronzer in Fair. I love that one. That's one of my top favorites. This is another one of my top favorites here, the Fenty bronzer in the shade In the Sun. So these next 3 are all from my BH Cosmetics Belgian Waffle face palette. And I've kind of had a bit of a realization about this palette recently. I kind of realized that I only really like half of the shades in here. I love this lightest bronzer. That's actually in my project pan right now. You can see I did hit pan on it. That's this one right here, but it's super similar to the Charlotte Tilbury light bronzer. If I want a super light bronzer like that, I can just use my Charlotte Tilbury one, and you know, I'm happy with the result. So it's not like that's offering anything super unique to my collection. The other 2 bronzer shades though, Batter and Cinnamon, that's these 2 right here. Those 2 shades I almost never dip into. Sometimes I will if I'm mixing them with the lighter shade, but I mean, those 2 shades look barely touched. There's like no dent in them whatsoever, and I've had this palette for such a long time. Those are just too deep for my skin tone. I also do really love both of these highlighters in here, but this deepest highlighter, Maple, that's just way too deep for my skin tone. I don't think I've ever used that shade. I feel like it's kind of silly to keep this palette for just those 3 shades, and I could depot them, but I just feel like I'd rather keep the palette all together and pass it on in its entirety. Well, I will miss this palette. I'm happy that I hit pan on one of the shades, but I am going to go ahead and declutter this. I guess that means I'll also be taking it out of my project pan. And then this last bronzer here, this is the Sigma matte bronzer in the shade Medium. This was sent in PR. I definitely wouldn't have picked this shade. They do make a light shade, a shade lighter than this. I think I would really like that shade, but this one, you can see it's a pretty similar depth to those 2 BH Cosmetics shades, and I just find that shade a bit too dark for my fair skin. So I guess that means I am only keeping, wow, that's actually so incredible. I'm only keeping 2 powder bronzers, and they're my 2 favorites, Charlotte Tilbury and Fenty. So that is actually, wow, probably my most successful category yet. So that leaves us with my highlighter collection. I've already decluttered, actually, 4 highlighters if you count the ones from those face palettes. Those 4 have already been decluttered. So here are my 3 cream highlighters. On top here we have the highlighter side of the NYX Wonder Stick in Fair, which I've already decided to keep. The middle one is my Minori cream blush in Champagne. Really pretty, but kind of similar to the NYX, both kind of warm toned. And then this third one here is the highlight side of the Oma contour stick in White Pearl. And that one is more of like a rosy toned highlight. I think it's going to make the most sense for me to just keep one like golden champagne toned highlighter and one more pink toned. So, and I've already decided to keep both of these because I do really like the contour side of both of these. But I didn't realize how similar that Minori highlighter was to the NYX Wonder Stick. I mean, obviously they're not identical, but they're close enough that I really don't need to keep both. So I actually think I will go ahead and pass on this Minori cream highlight. It's a really beautiful highlight formula, but I just don't need to keep two of basically the same color when I really hardly ever wear cream highlight. That one can go to a new home, and we will just keep both of these. I like that these are both 2-in-1 products too. They take up just like a pretty small amount of space for 2 products in one. So next I swatched all of my powder highlighters. I'll just go from top to bottom here. First we have the Estate Baked Highlight in the shade Lit. I actually really love this highlighter. It's super underrated in my opinion, and I guess I don't really have anything else quite this shade. It's a lot lighter than like some of the other more golden toned highlighters I have. So I think I will keep that one. This next one down is the more golden side of the Pixi Glowy Gossamer Duo in Subtle Sunrise. That's that shade right there. I actually swatched these in a weird order. The next shade down is the Nabla Skin Glazing Highlighter in the shade Privilege. I love this highlight. This is not going anywhere. This is one of my top favorites out of all of my highlighters, so that one I am not willing to get rid of. This next one down is the more pinky side of the Pixi Subtle Sunrise Duo. So there are the two Pixi ones, and the one in the middle is the Nabla. Interestingly, I don't know, I feel like I could maybe part with this because the pink side of this is pretty similar to the Nabla Skin Glazing, but I do prefer the Nabla formula. And I also feel like sometimes that Pixi, the pink side of the Pixi, can look a little bit too dark on my skin tone. And as far as the more golden side of this, you know, I'm already keeping the Estate Golden Highlighter, which is of course lighter, but I'm also definitely going to be keeping my Aether highlight in Pink Diamond Dust, which is another kind of peachy golden shade. So I actually feel like I wouldn't miss this duo all that much because I have other shades like these two. Even though I do think this is a really nice formula, I think I can get rid of that. I do really like this Sigma highlighter in the shade Sizzle. That is this next one down here. I was thinking it might be too dark for me, but I have found that, you know, as long as I use a light hand, which I always do anyway, it doesn't look too dark on my skin tone. So I think I will keep that one. That's also pretty new to my collection. Yeah, I think all the rest of these I will keep. These are my two Aether. That's Pink Diamond Dust and that's Pure Diamond Dust. I love both of those so much. They're definitely the most sparkly highlighters I have, but they are so gorgeous on the skin. So those I am for sure keeping. And then this last one is definitely unlike anything else I have. This is the ColourPop Super Shock Cheek in Monster. I've actually really fallen back in love with this highlighter this year. I've had it for a long time, but it is just such a unique shade, and I just don't have anything else like it. So I am going to keep that one as well. So yeah, really only keeping the highlighters that I feel like are adding something different to the mix. And I think it was a good move to get rid of the Pixi one just because I have these shades repeated in my other powder highlighters. Okay, so here we have everything laid out. This is what I'm decluttering. This is a total of 18 items that I decluttered if we're counting each pan as an individual item in the palettes. And then here is what I'm keeping. I'm keeping 34 things, and that's also counting the highlight and contour side of these sticks as separate items. So each of these counts as 2 things. I'm keeping 34. So since the primer is the only face product I decluttered, I will go ahead and put the percentage of my cheek collection that I decluttered here on the screen. But I would say that was a pretty successful declutter. Started off kind of slow, but it got better as we went. And just looking at all the things I am keeping, I feel really happy with all of these. But thank you guys so much for hanging out and decluttering with me today. I hope you had fun. Definitely make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for the rest of the categories. Most likely next will be my eyeshadow palette declutter. So that one will be a doozy. Excited to go ahead and film that one after this. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you had fun. If you did, be sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hopefully I will talk to you again very soon in my next video. Bye.